Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today, I'm sharing a story about love, betrayal, and unexpected connections. It's a journey that began in college, with friendships that seemed perfect on the surface but held secrets beneath. Let's title the story From Betrayal to Belonging, a college love story. I still remember my first day on campus like it was yesterday. The excitement, the nerves, the sense of stepping into a whole new world. I had just moved into my dorm, unpacking boxes of books, clothes, and little fragments of home. That evening, Emma came to visit. She'd been my girlfriend through high school. Smart, funny, with a smile that could light up a room. She was my anchor, and we were determined to make things work despite the challenges college would throw our way. Emma had already started making friends, and one of them was Easton. They had clicked during orientation, and it didn't take long before Emma suggested a double date with Easton and his girlfriend. I'll admit, I wasn't sure what to expect. Meeting new people wasn't exactly my forte, but I trusted Emma's judgment. We met at a little cafe near campus. Easton was easygoing, the kind of guy who could make anyone feel comfortable. He had this laid-back charm that balanced my more serious demeanor. Over coffee, we talked about sports, movies, and the whirlwind of college life. By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers and even made plans to hang out. Looking back, it's strange how quickly we clicked, as if fate had set us on a collision course. Weeks turned into months, and Easton and I became close friends. We started spending time together outside our double dates, hitting the gym, playing video games, and even studying in the library. I admired how carefree he seemed, while he often joked that I kept him grounded. Emma and I had every reason to believe things were perfect. It felt like everything was falling into place. But cracks began to form. Easton and his girlfriend started arguing more, their relationship showing signs of strain. At the same time, Emma and I were juggling the demands of college, and our own connection started to feel a bit distant. I didn't think much of it at first. Relationships aren't always perfect. But then something happened that changed everything. One evening, after a fight with his girlfriend, Easton confided in Emma. I wasn't there. I had stepped away for a moment. When I came back, they were laughing about something, and I brushed it off as nothing. But over time, their dynamic began to shift. Emma seemed more distant, and her laughter with Easton felt different. I told myself I was imagining things, until I found the messages. I'll never forget that moment. Emma's phone was sitting on the table, and a notification caught my eye. It was from Easton. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. The messages weren't innocent. They weren't explicit either, but the undertone was unmistakable. My stomach turned as I read them, betrayal burning in my chest. Confronting Emma was like ripping off a bandage. She cried, apologized, said it had been a mistake, but the damage was done. The next day, I stormed into Easton's dorm, and things escalated quickly. Words turned into shouts, shouts into fists. By the time campus security pulled us apart, we were both bleeding. We spent the night in the hospital, our friendship in shreds. After that, everything fell apart. Emma and I broke up, and Easton and his girlfriend ended things. The two of us, who had once been inseparable, were now fragments of what we used to be. I avoided Easton like the plague, throwing myself into my studies to drown out the anger and hurt. But something lingered, a question I couldn't shake. Why did he do it? Weeks passed, and one day, by chance, I ran into Easton in the library. The air between us was thick with tension, but neither of us walked away. I'm sorry, he said, his voice raw. I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it. I wanted to stay angry, but there was something in his eyes. a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. We sat down and talked. For hours. He told me about his struggles with relationships, his guilt over what happened with Emma, and something I hadn't expected. He looked down at his hands, twisting his pen nervously. "I've always struggled with opening up to people, Alex," he said. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "I thought if I could just keep everything light, keep everything easy, I could avoid letting anyone in too close. But then I got involved with Emma, and things started to change." I could feel his words sink into my chest. They sounded raw, unfiltered, and full of pain. I stared at him, unsure how to respond, unsure if I could even process everything he was saying. "I never wanted it to happen the way it did," Easton continued, his voice shaking a little. "But I've spent so long trying to piece myself together, trying to fix everything that I wasn't thinking. I let feelings I didn't know I had take over, and I hurt you in the process." His words hit me harder than I'd expected. I wasn't sure whether to believe him or hate him more. His honesty was unexpected, but it felt like a double-edged sword. I stayed silent, unsure of my emotions. "I can't change what happened, and I don't expect you to trust me again," he said finally, after a long pause. "But I needed you to know. I wanted to say it to your face, because you deserve the truth." The conversation lingered in my mind long after I left the library. I couldn't shake the feeling that Easton had just opened up something I wasn't ready to deal with. His words replayed in my mind like a broken record, each repetition leaving me more conflicted. Days later, we bumped into each other again, this time on the way to class. He looked as uneasy as I felt, but we shared a brief nod of acknowledgement and went on our way. I tried to convince myself I didn't care, that his apology didn't mean anything. Yet I found myself thinking about him constantly. It was in the quiet of one evening, while studying, when I received a text from him. "Hey, can we talk?" My heart leapt into my throat, and I stared at the message for what felt like hours. I debated ignoring it, but something tugged at me, an instinct I couldn't shake. The next day, we met at a small park just off campus. The air was chilly, the sky overcast, with faint winds rustling the golden leaves. We sat on a bench, not saying much at first, just letting the silence fill the space between us. It felt like both of us were trying to find the words but failing. "I've spent so much time trying to figure this out," Easton said eventually, breaking the quiet. His voice was quiet, thoughtful. Not just the mistakes, but how I got here. How I let things spiral out of control. I wanted to stay angry, but there was something in his eyes, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. We sat down and talked. For hours. He told me about his struggles with relationships, his guilt over what happened with Emma, and something I hadn't expected, never expected.